Hello, friends, and welcome to the Bikes or Death podcast. As always, my name is Patrick, and I am your host. And today's episode is with Andrew Onermaa, who you may have learned about during the 2020 Arkansas High Country Race. Now, we interviewed Ted King after he set an FKT on that race, and you may remember that there was a local hometown hero, aka Andrew Onermaa, who was pushing Ted King for the first 600, 700 miles. They were really toe-to-toe going at it. They were going in opposite directions, and so it was difficult to always know who was in the lead, and then they had different terrains coming up, and so it made it pretty exciting. Ultimately, Andrew made the decision to pull the plug and withdraw from the race, and obviously we're going to be talking about that on today's episode, so I don't want to get too much into his story, but this is an episode that I've personally been really looking forward to recording and catching up with Andrew. Yeah, he didn't win, but what I saw was a lot of heart, and it was even more on display when he withdrew from the race. He recorded about a 10 or 15 minute video just right there on the side of the road, sharing some of his thoughts and feelings right there in the moment. And it was truly powerful. It was really, you don't always see that. You don't always see exactly what it takes to push yourself that hard. You know, we're just sitting at home watching the dots, rooting, getting on social media, seeing if we can figure out what's going on, coming up with our own narratives in our heads. But oftentimes we're wrong. And it's much more interesting to actually get to hear from the racers themselves and just hear what's going on through their heads or whatever, they were dealing with during that race or that event. And I'll tell you what, Andrew did not disappoint. This guy is all heart, all emotion, and he's all in. I really, truly did enjoy talking to him. We were able to meet up at a primitive campsite there along the Mulberry River in the Ozarks in Arkansas. Now, a couple warnings about this episode. All of my episodes are usually labeled as explicit. This one might have a little extra spicy profanity in it and may not be suitable for all audiences. And don't be surprised if at some point during this episode, water starts to form in your eyes and starts to trickle down your cheek. Like I said, Andrew truly is a emotional guy. He wears his heart on his sleeve. Man, I'll tell you what, this conversation is really a product of, I feel like, being locked down for so long and starved for human interaction. Just a really interesting guy, someone I've been really looking forward to talking to. And then you throw a little bit of whiskey in the mix and you get yourself a 3-hour podcast with, in my opinion, one of the most interesting ultra endurance cyclists. I think at some point we completely forgot that we were even recording a podcast and just were talking and talking and talking. And so, I hope you enjoy being a fly on the wall of my conversation with Andrew Onermaa as we dive into his past, what led him to cycling, what led him to gravel, and how he propelled himself from not even owning a gravel bike to within a year going toe-to-toe with Ted King and pushing him to an FKT on the Arkansas High Country. It really is a fascinating story, and I'm looking forward to sharing it with you. I would like to say quickly that I do appreciate all the feedback from last week's episode with Dr. Seth Wood. It was a profound and inspirational episode. I personally took a lot away from it, and I was hoping that a lot of people would find value in it. And based on the amount of messages and feedback that I've got on it, I just wanted to say thank you. I hope that I was able to do Dr. Seth Wood's story justice. It certainly deserves it. And I appreciate him again coming on the show. And again, he's another guy that's just wearing his heart on his sleeve and putting it all out there. And certainly always appreciate that. All right. Well, listen, before we get to today's episode, let's give a shout out to our latest group of patrons that have signed up since last week's episode. We've got another nice batch of patrons that have signed up to be sustaining members of the show. So without further ado, let's thank Michelle Aguilar, Matt Long, Joseph Harrington, Chanel Hayes, Ben Holbrook, Randy Braley, Jeff Carroll, and Joanne Maurice. Now, Joanne actually signed up back in June 2019 and has been a patron ever since. And that was before I started giving shout outs on the episode. So if you've been a patron since before I started giving shout outs and you'd like your name shouted out, I would love to shout it out. Just send me an email or send me a DM on Instagram or something like that. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of, and just let me know. I would love to shout your name from the rooftops. I appreciate all the newest sustaining members, and I've got to say that the response I've been getting on Patreon has been freaking awesome. You guys totally rock. We have obviously been making a little bit of a push to ramp up on Patreon. I've set a goal of quitting my job and being the full-time host of the Bikes for Death podcast and making this my number one priority, making this my main focus. Not distracted by other jobs and things. That'd be nice, huh? More podcasts, better quality. Could be nice. If you're interested in that, if you'd like to help support that new effort and you'd like to hire me as the full-time host of the Bikes for Death podcast, you can find more information over at patreon.com/Bikes for Death. All right. Well, today's episode is supported by Experience Fayetteville and the Fayetteville, Arkansas community. Fayetteville is excited to once again be the host community for the 2021 Arkansas High Country Race. It's quickly becoming known as one of the most challenging races in the country. The 1,000-mile-plus Arkansas High Country Race departs from downtown Fayetteville on Saturday morning, October 9th. The race follows the perimeter of the Arkansas High Country route, a series of 3 mixed surface loops that connect several of the state's stunning natural regions, including the Ozark and Ouachita Mountains and the Arkansas River Valley. And new for 2021, race officials have announced the creation of the Short Circuit Race. This is an opportunity to experience just the northwest loop of the route. The shorter 240-mile distance is perfect for the weekend warrior looking for a limit-pushing course. Registration for the 2021 Arkansas High Country Race and the Short Circuit Race opens June 1st. Each race distance is limited to a field of 50 competitors and expect to fill up fast. Additional race information, including links to register, can be found by searching High Country at experiencefayetteville.com. All right, everybody, we've got a long episode today. Sit back, kick back, and I hope that you enjoy being a fly on the wall of my conversation with Andrew Onermaa as we explore the depths of ultra endurance racing and what it takes to push a pro-level athlete at his own game. Dun-dun-dun. All right, everybody, without further ado, let's have Miles Arbor kick it off with the Bikes for Death theme song.
You load up your bike, you ride away from home. You could be with your friends or you could be alone. You ride for a day or maybe more. You just love being in the great outdoors. Everything you need is strapped to your bars, including that new pillow you got from Santa Claus. And then you think, oh shit, to yourself. You left that super lightweight tent on the living room shelf. Bikes or death. Bikes or death. Podcast.
For anyone who doesn't know, how do you say your name? Andrew Onermaa?
That's hilarious. I was driving down here. I was like, he's probably going to ask how to say my last name.
Yeah.
How do I say my last name?
How do you say it?
Okay, so my last name is Finnish.
Oh, shit.
So the way it's said, I can't say it. Like, it's supposed to be something along the lines of Onermaa. Like, there's this
Onermaa.
almost like
Andrew Onermaa.
But I grew up in the South, obviously. So, like, my mom taught me, she's like, honor your ma, Onermaa.
Okay.
And that's kind of how I introduced it to a lot of people. Sometimes it's Onermaa, sometimes it's Honor Man. It's because my name's been wrong my entire life, so I don't even know what it is because everybody says it differently.
Dude, this is takes a lot of weight off my shoulders. I can just call you whatever I want.
Yeah, for real.
I'm so used to getting it wrong because I have a combination of ADD and dyslexia. And so like basically the wires in my brain get crossed sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes I catch it and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm listening back to the podcast and I'm like, what the fuck did you know, were you saying? Like, I know that that's wrong, but I don't catch it when I'm saying it.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating, but
Yeah.
it does happen. So Andrew Onermaa, that's what I'm going
Nice.
with right
Nailed
now.
it.
That's what in my head, that's what I've been calling you.
Like
And
if you take the average of everyone that says it, that's like the perfect middle ground right there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I like to be average. But yeah, I mean, how was a polite way to put this? I mean, probably a lot of people hadn't really heard about you
For sure.
until the Arkansas High Country in 2020. Just for anyone who wasn't watching, Ted King showed up kind of 2 weeks before, or signed up about 2 weeks before and kind of surprised everybody. I don't want to get too much into it, but you essentially are one of the guys that went toe-to-toe against Ted King in that year's high country. And a lot of people were like, who's this guy? But what I was thinking about on my ride today, because I was kind of like, pushing myself up those climbs and like trying to find that inspiration. I was trying to put myself in your position. Like I'm Andrew and Ted's out there, and
that's cool.
Like what mental tricks am I going to play right now to like push myself to like outdo Ted King or whatever. And I just found that I related to you so much. Like I was rooting for you. Nothing against Ted King, right? All due respect to Ted King, but like I never met you a day in my life. I don't know you from anybody, but as far as I could tell, you're just like the hometown kid who like really was hungry to go out and put a big effort and put your heart on the line and really like left it out there. As far as, I mean, not as far as I could tell, anybody could tell like you left it out there. And so I really related to you and was inspired by you. And like, as soon as I saw that, I was like, I want to talk to that guy, like for sure. So here we are.
That's cool.
How many months later? That was October.
That was the end of October because it started on Halloween.
Yeah.
So a little while ago. I mean, honestly, that feels like a lifetime ago at this point. It's crazy how that happens with just big efforts in general. Is in the moment, that's the craziest thing you've ever experienced. But then a few months go by and you kind of start to forget what it was like. And they say the best alpinists have the worst memory because they go do something insane. And then over time, they're like, was it really that bad? I don't know. Maybe I need to go try again. And I think I could try at least as hard as that last time I tried. So
yeah, well, it's good to finally like. I knew I didn't want to like talk to you on Zoom. Like I was like, I just want to sit down. And so we're here. We're actually, you tell us where we are so I don't mess it up.
Yeah, this is a badass spot. So I knew you needed to work your way south.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, what's in an hour radius south? Because I was working earlier today. I just got off work and drove straight here. So got to be in the Ozark National Forest. That was my first thing when you asked where should we meet up to do it. It's like, we have to be in the Ozarks. I absolutely love the Ozarks. We're talking about riding bikes, and this is where I ride my bike all the time, this place. So this particular spot, we're by the Mulberry River, just south of White Rock. We're on Shores Lake Road, it's an alternate route of the Arkansas High Country. It's not the original route.
Oh.
So I'm hoping this year we can transition back towards the classic White Rock climb. But I've been on this road a bunch, and it's just gorgeous.
Beautiful.
And it gets quiet real quick.
I got a chance to ride about an hour and a half up and down the road. And I mean, it's what I've come to expect in Arkansas, just like endless, beautiful gravel roads, canopied with trees, just lush green, and there's water everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty crazy.
It's like, this is classic Arkansas right here. So
yeah, this is classic Arkansas.
Yeah.
And I was mentioning earlier that I'm going to start tagging everywhere when I interview somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to start tagging like where I interview them, because I don't know, it's kind of cool. A lot of podcasts happen like in a studio, and that was all I always wanted to like get out, talk to people outside, out in nature preferably, and It feels a lot less like an interview and a lot more just like a conversation.
Yeah.
Whereas if you put like a desk here and like, you're in a room,
For
and
sure.
you got the mic stand and everything,
Yeah.
and like it kind of like notches up the intensity a little bit. And
Yeah.
out here, it's like hard not to be anything but relaxed.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like I mentioned, if I have free time and I have a choice of where I want to go be outside somewhere.
For sure.
That's all week when I'm working. That's where I'm dreaming where I can be at. So.
Yeah. Tell me, I again, man, I don't know anything about you. So it's, other than what I see on Instagram and what I watched on the race. So I'm really just interested and excited to get to know you a little bit more. But I'm curious, are you an Arkansas native, or did you move here?
I was born in Missouri, St. Peters, Missouri. Was
so
there
not too far away, I'm guessing?
Not too far away. It's kind of close to St. Louis, so it's actually not too close, but it borders Arkansas. So moved here when I was in second grade, and I was here from second grade until somewhere in college, and I eventually dropped out. So Arkansas for a long time, went out west, lived in Utah, lived in Alaska, lived in Utah again, and then ultimately moved back to Arkansas.
What were you doing bouncing all around? Just working, or were you adventuring? Or
just seasonal work, trying to see new spots. So I initially went out to Salt Lake. I dropped out of college. I started off in engineering, and I hated it. It was awful. High school 4.0 student. So basically hey, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be an engineer, or you're going to look into being a doctor. This is what everybody's saying already. So I already had this pressure graduating high school.
And just to interject real quick, is that what, like at that time of your life at 18, 17 with the 4.0, is that what you thought you wanted to? Is like the standard American?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I hear that.
There was always a part of me that's like, oh, but if I was really good at basketball or cross country, whatever sport I was doing at the time, that was always, I wanted to be like a professional athlete. That's what it always really was. After a while, I stopped saying it, but I was always working at it, you know?
I hear you.
But yeah, I thought I was going to be doing one of those things, and I just hit a point where it didn't make sense to me. Why do I need to make this money? Why do I need to have a high paying salary because I'm smart? And it stopped making sense to me. I wanted to go do things. In college, I had some freedom. I had a car. I didn't have to report back to a certain place. I would just start skipping classes and be like, I'm going to go rock climbing. Like, are you kidding me? This place is incredible. Look at all the stuff I can do. So I kept taking trips outdoors, started even taking road trips out of the state for rock climbing. I just got really obsessed with rock climbing. And that's all I cared about was I'm going to get as much free time as I can so I can be outside and climb rocks. And
I talk to more and more people that come from rock climbing into cycling.
There's a certain culture to it where people that when they get in it, they're obsessed with it.
Yeah.
And
it's the same kind of
it's
thing.
like this whole dirtbag culture of there's a ton of vans and trucks, and you
I
don't
feel
really
a
know what
kinship
anyone
with climbers for sure. Like when I was interviewing Lael, I needed a place to van camp, and I saw a group of dirtbag in a white, Chevy camper van, and I went over. I was like, "Hey, where's a good place to van camp?" They're like, "Here, here, 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 here." Those are. I mean, I get it. It's cool. Those are there's like I said, there's like a kinship there.
Yeah, and so it's this whole idea of how can I work as little as possible to fully just chase this dream of climbing rocks and trying to be this professional like athlete that gets to travel and pursue big objectives. That's what I was really excited on. Was one, I just absolutely loved it. It just was moving meditation to me, required you physically and mentally, like every single bit of your attention. And so I loved just kind of escaping your day-to-day life and just being so fully in the moment. That's really what it is when you can feel in the moment, it's hard to beat that. People get glimpses of that when they watch a football game and it's in overtime and no one knows what's going to happen. That's how a lot of people find their in the moment.
I feel like they're even like living their moment through somebody else on the screen.
Exactly.
Like they're living, they're trying to like live those moments,
But there's so much
they're not
of,
living their own moment, you know?
It's that day-to-day routine where sometimes that's the only way someone can break out of the routine and have a feel in the moment per se, is maybe it's watching a movie, some action thriller, and
fish. Oh, something's
cool.
going fishing. I think that bird just went fishing.
Hell yeah.
Now we're talking nature.
And that's why you sit outside, because you just get to see wildlife every once in a while.
Doing its thing.
Yeah, so a little sidetracked, but basically just really became obsessed with the idea of maximizing my free time and pursuing hard efforts that required both my brain and like my body. And so that kind of transitioned into mountains, and I got really into peak bagging. And
excuse me?
Peak bagging. So basically, like, there's a peak over there, I'm going to go stand on the top of it.
Okay.
And so
is it like teabagging?
It's not teabagging. That's funny.
Sorry.
I don't know why that's basically if you
bagging.
Get multiple ones in one outing, then it's kind of like you're bagging each one. Like, I went out and I did 5 of those in one go.
Okay, totally got it.
Yeah. So it was this weird transition because there's this big solo experience. And so it'd be like, here's this ridge line. I want to go stand on top of every single mountain on that ridge line, and I want to get back to my car and drive back to work. Like, I have 2 days off. This is what I'm going to go do. And so that's just evolved over time.
Like, so break this down for me. I look at everything like on a timeline.
Okay.
Like,
yeah.
So you get out of like high school, you get into college, and then at some point you're like, at what point was your mind set on this life that you're pursuing?
Yeah.
That's such a wise thing to like maximize the value of your life, like maximize the things that you're doing and the value that you're getting out of your lives and chasing the things that make you happy.
Yeah.
Like, that's a very wise thing that for some reason most people don't figure out. But so I'm very curious, like, at what point you kind of like really honed in on it. Cause how old are you? You're still young.
I'm 28, turning 29 next month.
Yeah. So you figured this kind of stuff out pretty young.
Well, you say figure it out. It's questionable, because there's times where I'm the flip end of the spectrum and I'm like, man, if I was just working some steady career, making good money, not stressing about living day to day financially, and being able to just buy nice things like a baller bike, put all the cool things on it. And it's instead just living on the fringe for years and years on end. You get a ton of rewarding moments from it. And at the same time, it's work. It's uncomfortable. I think that's what a big part of it is you have to be uncomfortable.
But both of them are work. That's the thing,
True.
Right? Is like
very true.
Having the big house and the nice car and all that, that's work.
Yeah.
And it comes at a price. And the price is all the things that you're doing.
Yeah.
Right? And so both of them are work. But what we're talking about is, what are you getting out of it? What is the reward? What is the work and reward that you're getting?
Yeah.
And I moved out at 17 and I've been on my own for a long time. Like, I know what it's like to like always be like, or you have to never be sure about anything. But I don't know. I think for some people, like, I've just learned to accept that I don't think I was cut out to do it the other way, like for whatever reason. So I might as well not fight it. I might as well just like, okay, well, this is who I am. So
for sure,
just kind of go and do it.
Yeah. I think that's the case for a lot of people. I don't think one way is right or wrong for sure. Obviously, you just have to do what's right for you. And I think that somewhere along the line, people kind of forget what makes them happy. And like, one thing I love asking someone is, what are you passionate about? You ask that question and a lot of people freeze. It's like, well,
I'm not gonna freeze.
Like and then if they start talking about a TV show or a movie or something like that, I'm like, wait a second, like, think about that. What are you passionate about? What are you doing? And so spent a lot of years just surrounding myself with passionate people. That plays a key factor in it, is when you're surrounded by. So whenever I was living up in Alaska, you're surrounded by people. Someone's there because they're obsessed with kayaking, and there's this insanely good kayaking, and on their day off they get to go do it. Or someone else, they're obsessed with like bouldering, if you're familiar with bouldering, where you just climb smaller rocks, like smaller versions of it. Or someone just really loves trail running. And so no matter what it is, there's a reason someone went to that spot with seasonal work. So that was a really addicting thing about seasonal work.
I never thought about that.
Everyone you're surrounded with is there for a reason. Like there's some people that are locals and they're like, oh, it's just like a job where I work. But for the most part, seasonal work brings people from all over. And so
the money's good too, right?
It's good enough to where the goal is you work for that season really, really hard, and then you have some spare cash that you were able to save up, and then you have like a month to do a road trip. And so you just do as much as you want to do in that month.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, then it's time to start the next seasonal gig.
Yeah.
So it's ways to hustle to where you can have a nice burst of free time, essentially.
Dude, I mean, the way I look at it as a 41-year-old guy, I mean, I got married so young, you know, and like I went down that, you know, house, kids, family, like route, this just standard American thing. And of course you don't regret it. I mean, you live your life and stuff, but like, I do think that, you know, you're at the time of your life and like, you're doing it at the right time. Like these are the times when you should be taking a risk and exploring your passion, because life is long, you know, and if you're not feeling anything, like these are the times when you should be really pushing it. My dad died at 58 and the only thing he ever did is work. I mean, he worked 2-3 jobs his whole life and like never went on vacation, never did anything. He just freaking worked. And that really hit me. You know, it's like you could do that. You know, you could like just work and then die.
Yeah.
That's an option. And that was the turning point for me. It was when I was like, man, you know, but that's what it took for me to kind of be like, there's more to life than just working and having things. You know, there's way more.
Yeah. And that's what's cool to see with how you're trying to transition this into like your job, right? I was on your website earlier, and what I loved is, I haven't been on your website in a little while, but I looked at the section where it's a job application that you posted. Of basically, you're trying to apply to be a full-time podcast producer, right?
Yeah.
And
hire me.
It was so cool. And I've seen you do several things like that where this is what you're trying to do all the time. And the thing is, you're not trying to be a bum that just hangs out in the woods all the time. Like you're trying to give to the community, right? And you found a way to where you can meaningfully give to a community where people can relate and it can inspire them in some way, or maybe it just is really great on long road trips to just have something to listen to.
Yeah.
I specifically queued up certain episodes that you've done for like the Arkansas High Country, for example.
Like you had ones that you knew you were going to listen to? Oh, interesting.
For sure. So like with Sophie on, I was like, all right, you're not going to listen to it night one when you pull an all-nighter, because you know you can pull that all-nighter no matter what. You're going to listen to it night two whenever it really starts to suck. And you've never pulled 2 full all-nighters in a row in your entire life. And you're going to listen to Sophion and Patrick talk. And you're going to be like, oh, Sophion's a dude that lives in another country, that rides his bike a lot, and he pulls all-nighters. If he can do it, why can't I do it?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I don't know until I try, right? So that's basically what it was. That, and then I think there's another one with James Hayden.
Oh, yeah.
That, where he went through some serious shit. I forget which country he was in. Wasn't he getting held up by rebels or something like that?
Just robbers.
Yeah.
Robbers on horseback.
Yeah.
But like in the middle of the race, it was, I don't remember the details enough to like recant them perfectly, but he essentially got robbed in the middle of the night, like in a foreign country.
So I listened to that whenever I'm just feeling tired. I've been riding my bike for 3 days.
Went on to get 4th or 2nd or something.
I forget which race.
I can't remember, but I mean, he went.
I mean, he's one of the best in the game right now. So that's another part of it too, is I want to hear from the best people in the game and be like, what is your mindset? What are you thinking? What are you doing preparing for these races? you just got to try to emulate what the best are doing.
It's fun to be able to talk to these people.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, to talk to you, to talk to anybody. And that's the fun about a podcast, because that's all I wanted to know was like, all you're seeing is dots and maybe a social
For
media
sure.
post, and that's it. I mean, there's not books written, there's not seminars, there's not like anything.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, I'll just start asking
There's
people
so
some
many
questions.
incredible stories, and that's I've been wanting more podcasts about it. So I love that you're doing it, because I want more. I want more episodes.
Hire me.
Exactly.
I will pump out so many podcasts.
Exactly.
You have no idea.
And there's been stuff I've been dying to talk about, and I'm like, shit, how can I share any of this? And I've thought a couple times about starting a podcast just because I want more people talking about it.
Yeah, you should.
So that's why I am so psyched that you're here. And I wanted to do the coffee outside and gear swap this morning, because I just want more people to know what you're doing, because I think that you should definitely have this job, and the community sees value in it. And that's essentially, I'm trying to do something too, where I want to find a way to give back to the community, and in turn it helps me too. If you found something that makes you really, really happy and you can help other people with it, then man, there's people that believe in that and should be able to make it happen.
Can you believe how well you can do at something if you have like the support, the financial resources, and the passion, and the like, all the things? Like, let's say for you as a racer, like if you didn't have the financial pressure, if you didn't have to go work a job, like if you could have a coach and all, like if you could, like, can you imagine how unlimited your potential could be? I guess you don't know until you find out.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
can imagine.
So with coaching, I have been getting some help with coaching. So that's been one cool step since the high country. Is everything leading up to it was me just trying to figure out how to train on a bike for this wacky distance and game of not sleeping and stuff. So Ernie and Scotty, who have had the FKT twice on the Arkansas High Country, they helped me go through this whole base phase of training, basically all winter, getting my fitness up. So it's been really awesome getting knowledge from them, because they've been riding bikes for a really long time.
I really love Scotty and Ernie. For anyone who doesn't happen to know, I recorded an episode with them. I don't remember what number it was, but at the coffee outside. And by the way, thank you for organizing that, and thank you for everybody who came. It was, I mean, it's nice when you throw a party and people come, right? And there was a good turnout today.
Yeah, for sure.
So Ernie wasn't there, but Scotty was. And I was just reminiscing on how much I enjoyed getting to meet them both for the first time. And just, again, you don't really know these people. They're ex-pro road cyclists. And then they came over to this. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
But you just don't know. And I remember just like loving sitting down and talking to both of them.
Absolutely.
Had so much fun. So that's another one worth going back and listening to.
For sure.
Yeah, it's cool that people get inspiration from the podcast. I certainly do. I mean, how could you not, right? Like, interview all these people.
Yeah.
So how'd you get to, what brought you back to Arkansas?
Yeah.
After all your
question.
gallivanting
For
over
sure. So when I left Arkansas, I remember saying to one of my housemates at the time, I'm leaving Arkansas and I'm never going to live here again. I just had this idea of the grass is always greener. The West is the promised land.
Yeah.
The South is dumb. People don't understand what it is to go play outdoors. I don't know. It was weird. I would think I was just bitter about some stuff.
Sure.
Maybe like the school system and how you're supposed to go with the rest of your life, I guess. I don't know. But so I left and spent all these years trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. Just that bummed out. What do I do with my life, man? I just can't figure it out. Years. That was me. Like, what's the point? And so some of it was playing around the mountains. I had to go scare myself to the point of where I thought I would die, and then it'd make me feel alive. And I'd be like, okay, this is good. These little bursts of getting scared so much for life that you're like, oh, it's okay. This is something. This is, I don't know.
What ways were you pushing yourself? Like just putting yourself in unsafe situations, or are you like bungee jumping and skydiving?
No,
like
it wasn't anything like that. It was more, I'm going to go stand on top of said mountain. And it's mountains where there's no research on it, really. There's no information online on how to go about it.
Oh, yeah.
You just don't know. It's
Adventure.
What's the best way? Is it the north face, the south face, coming up from this ridge line? Yeah. So you really have no idea. So I would just launch out and choose what I thought was a good line with no information about it, and get in these situations where one little mistake and you're dead. Like, as simple as that. And I would sometimes find myself in those situations and just pause for 15, 20 seconds and just kind of like soak that in. Be like, hey, you are so alive right now that one little thing is over. And so that got addicting in a weird way where I'm like, whoa, this is way better than any drug. You can't be more in the moment than this. Kind of coming back that whole thing of being in the moment. When your moment is
life and
just
death.
life and death,
and
that doesn't get more like real than that. And
fuck bikes or death. I mean, for real, like life or death. Like, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Like when everything that you do, I haven't been in very many situations that I think were quite as extreme as you, but I've been in situations where I've been very aware of the importance of everything that I'm doing and knowing that all of them matter. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
For sure. And so it helped me work through some depression for sure. It was my way of coping with the world and things. And over time, I've been able to kind of heal myself from whatever I needed to heal myself from, I guess. But I've finally found the outlet of bikes where I can push my mind and body that far, but it doesn't have to be in necessarily a life or death situation.
Yeah.
Like, you can still die bikepacking or riding your bike in your neighborhood, but it's a little bit different because you can push your body beyond what you can do. I don't know where I'm going with that, but basically you can collapse on the bike and keep going. So that's the weird thing.
Well, it's not life or death, right? Like you're still finding limits. You're able to push yourself and find limits. I mean, you're not done finding your limits. I know that for a fact. You know, but what you were doing could potentially get you killed.
Yeah.
What you're doing now could potentially get you killed, but with a lot less probability.
Exactly. But it gives me the same rush.
Right.
And so that's the cool thing. I'm like, okay, my family's going to appreciate this a little bit more.
Yeah.
Like, my family's always tried to be supportive. Like, we love you, son. You're doing some crazy shit, though. And so
I wonder, man, this is what I struggle with. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No,
but
not at all.
You said I didn't know what I was working through. And I know that for myself, what I had to work through was like just feeling like I'd been lied to my whole life, you know, like feeling like there was this whole other life that was here this whole time and like no one told me.
Yeah.
Which again, the podcast is just like, I'm going to shoot it from the rooftops because I think these things matter, you know, and like I don't know. I want people to have these kind of opportunities if they want to have them.
Yeah.
You know,
it makes me think about, I was in journalism for a while in college, and we had a guy that showed up. He was a guest speaker for the class, I guess, and he basically talked about all these cool things he was doing in the world, traveling around, telling stories, taking photos, and it just blew me away. I'm like, this is your life? How is this your life? Like, I want to know, give me like the steps. And he was just so, you just got to do it, man. And I was like, what? No, like, what do you mean? Like, can you write down the steps of just doing it? And there aren't any steps.
Yeah.
Everyone's fucking figuring it out as they go.
100%.
Anyone that creates their own job out of their own passion, there is no framework for it.
No.
And so you just have to keep doing it until either you're like, this isn't worth it anymore, or you figure it out.
Yeah.
Or you never figure it out, but you're always trying, and at least you're chasing what you want to do. So
yeah, I mean, that's the journey of life. You never know if you're gonna hit it or not, but it should be the pursuit of trying.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I mean, not to sound too cliche, but I mean, 100%, I feel like everything in my life has led up to the podcast, and that, like, in weird ways, even growing up Mormon, being comfortable, like in Mormonism, you have to talk in front of the congregation all the time. So learning to talk and communicate with people, being like not too nervous to talk to people and stuff, like, you know, just everything is like kind of lined up. But it's like you say, like, you have to just do it. Like there wasn't a roadmap. I didn't set out with a business plan or a mission statement or any idea what I was doing. I literally just bought equipment and started talking to people. And as it's gone along, I've like, okay, well, let me shape it into something, you know? I'm sure you might know a little bit about that with Ozark Gravel Cyclists, OGC. That's what you call it, OGC.
But it's, what you're saying is basically a few people, they recognize what you're doing. That's what some of it is they recognize that you're doing this, and they're like, hey, we appreciate you're doing this. Let's see more. We love it. And so that's exactly what you've been doing with the podcast, is you got some fans and they're like, this is sick. Keep doing it. You got some feedback. Yeah. Like there is a need for it, or a want for it at least. And so the more and more people that speak up and say, hey, the cycling world needs this. And you can find that in so many different outlets. So for me, I'm trying to create like cycling routes out here in the Ozark National Forest. That's what I want to do, because I get to go ride my bike in this incredible landscape. But while I'm doing that, checking out new roads, all this stuff, I'm also training for like personal objectives. It's helping me out, but it's also helping out other people. You gotta, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that is an important point, is that, at least from my standpoint, like you're saying yours, is like there should be a component of giving back, and it can't be just like, okay, well, what am I getting out of this?
Exactly.
You know? And I mean, anyone who starts anything like this is just out of pure passion and love for the sport and the community. Like, there's no guarantees. Like, if we're talking about the steps to success as a ultra endurance bike packer, or as like, you know, doing a podcast or doing your gravel cycle community, like we're in a new community. We're in a new sport. And that's the exciting part, is we're getting an opportunity to be involved in actually shaping the future of what is this going to look like? You know, what does gravel look like? What is going and bike packing and racing, and what are the ethics of that? And we get to talk about those things and be examples of that and all those things.
And that's something I really wanted to touch on that reminds me of, is basically with bike packing racing taking off in the country, like there's got to be some ground rules, right? And that's where I've been seeing some really interesting shifts in like the local community and nationwide. I don't know of a ton of bike packing races. You got your classics, you got the Tour Divide, you got the Colorado Trail, you got the Arizona Trail. What are some of the other, I mean, some people are even like, what are the classics in America for bike packing racing? Like what would you put on there if you had to name top 5 bike packing races in the United States right now? What's on that list?
I would say, only from my perspective, but Arkansas High Country is on there. Tour Divide is on there. Arizona Trail Race is on there. Colorado Trail Race. So that's 4. And then TNG, Trans North Georgia.
Okay.
Yeah, those are the top 5 that just popped in my head.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so obviously, if we had to pause for a second, even think of 5, it's pretty fresh, right?
Yeah.
And so with the Arkansas High Country route, it's pretty bizarre in the fact that you can go either direction. You can start anywhere on it. Like Colorado Trail, it's pretty obvious. Either you start at the north end of it or the south end of it.
Sure.
There's certain things like that where it's not a loop, and it is what it is. And so when it comes to individual time trials, that's where I'm really interested in all of it. I don't necessarily think that I'm going to be chasing races all the time, because the end of the day, it's the route that inspires me. And I want to put in the best effort I can possibly put in on that route. And so I've only done 1 bike packing race so far, and I found that I wasn't even planning on doing it in the first place.
Really?
Yeah. So I decided pretty late as well. it was sometime in September where I decided I was going to do the Arkansas High Country race.
I gotcha.
I did it over the summer already. So I already saw all of it, like the summer just a few months before June. So I guess a little more.
But you just rode it like touring it, or
well,
like
it's this weird mix of going hard and taking breaks. So
with what mindset?
Yeah.
With like, maybe I'll race it, or just because it's there?
It sounded really, really cool. And I just got back to Arkansas and I was just riding everything I could because all of it was new to me. I had ridden bikes in Arkansas some, but never gravel.
Yeah.
And so I just went nuts. Like, as soon as I started riding some of the stuff, I was like, I got to see more. I got to see more. This is all incredible. And so I just went berserk, basically riding all the gravel I could. And one of my homies, Jesse Turner, like, huge part of me learning what I've learned so far was him taking me in and being like, oh yeah, here's a bunch of great local roads. By the way, this is what gravel is like. This is how you descend. Yeah, slow Southern steel. This is how you descend. This is how you pack the bike. All kinds of stuff. Like, I didn't know shit.
Yeah.
I rode fixed gear bikes.
It's great
for
to have
years.
a mentor.
Yeah, and so
you said you rode fixed coming into this?
Yeah, fixed gear, really.
Okay.
So
yeah, the whole
since
gravel
college.
and
Gravel,
bike
crazy
packing
new.
stuff.
I
Was
think
like,
we're right around a year of me riding gravel.
Right now.
Right now.
Oh,
Or at least since getting the Warbird. So I had a Specialized Roubaix.
You got a Warbird a year ago?
It was sometime in May.
So you went balls deep.
Yeah.
You didn't go crazy. You went balls deep.
Yeah. For lack of a better term, for
Sorry.
sure. No, I love it.
Someone called me out for using ass rape in the podcast the other day.
I do remember that. So, like, it takes a lot for me to be like, whoa, that was they really said something. I remember I was like cooking or doing dishes or something. I had my headphones. I do that. I'll listen to your podcast sometimes or other podcasts while I'm doing.
Oh, I do it all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so sometimes you zone out and then. Yeah.
You said that. I was like, huh, that's all right. I laughed though. I was just like by myself in my apartment and laughed.
I'll take the opportunity to take it back. I took a moment to. That's the thing is, like, you record a podcast and you say shit, and then, like, I didn't even know I said it, to be honest with you. Someone emailed me and they're like, they're like, hey, I'm, maybe that's not the best.
Yeah.
And I was like, did I say it or did the other guy say it? Anyway.
Yeah.
What the fuck are we talking about?
Well, kind of like we're getting into the one, we're trying to figure out what are even the top 5 bikepacking races in the country, but then talking about ground rules. So what are the common rules of bikepacking when it comes to racing in the first place? So I feel like you kind of always go back to the Tour Divide. What are the rules and ethics of the Tour Divide? It seems like that's kind of like the first.
It's like the golden rule of bikepacking.
Exactly.
Kind of.
And so whenever I get really into a new hobby, so I've been chasing passion for years, like trying to find the right thing. And so I learned a ton about mountaineering and alpinism or rock climbing or this or that. And so now it's bikepacking. So I want to know the whole history of it. Because if I'm going to put my heart and soul into it, I need to know who the people have been leading up to it. What's the history? I don't want to come in some brand new person and be like, la-di-da-di-da, this is how I think it should be.
Yeah.
Like, no, fuck that. Let's go back to the beginning and what has it become up to this point? And like, let's be respectful to the past, but look into the future.
I have to tell you, I was just telling Seth Wood on the when I was just in Stillwater, what I'm going to do. And I was just on the phone with Mike. Do you know Mike Dion? That did the Ride the Divide film.
Yeah.
So I was just on the phone with him a couple of days ago and telling him that what I want to do with the podcast is, well, like just one segment is I want to do a like bikepacking OG history kind of, and like capture all of those stories from the beginning before, I mean, I don't know. I mean, not before they're dead, but just, I mean, everybody's memories fade and stuff, and so like, I just want to start capturing like those stories because we do need, I mean, unless there's old like message, there's old message boards you can like dig up and stuff like that, but that's about it. There's the old MTB cast that has some stuff on there, but that's the next mission of mine.
That's incredible. We need that, and we should hire you.
Hire me. We need
that. And I keep referencing back to like the mountains and rock climbing and stuff, but they've made films and documentaries about this, like the Valley Uprising with rock climbing, where basically here is rock climbing history in the United States.
It's a great
This is
film.
the different eras. This is where it is now, but it's because of everything leading up to it. So you gotta, with FKTs in general, I feel like you're always chasing a cleaner and cleaner style to do it. So an FKT, fastest known time, I think the purest form is where you take no help from anybody and you only use resources that'd be available to anyone.
Yes.
If any other rider decided to do it at the same time, there shouldn't be a cooler along the trail with your favorite drinks and snacks, but not a cooler next to it for the other person.
Yeah. I agree.
I don't think there should be coolers on the trail, period.
I agree.
And I think that it's incredible that the community wants to come out and be like, hey, here's a water bottle, here's this, here's that. I think that's really cool. It makes sense whenever it's the very beginning of a race where everybody's passing through at the same time or something, or if there were like stop times and start times. But if it's one continuous effort, if 20 people come out to help someone on their FKT effort and another person that's like, say, he has a 6-day time frame. So for me, for instance, next time I try the high country, I want to do it as the FKT and I want to chase it in the purest style possible. I shouldn't be able to tell all my friends that live in the area just because I live here to like, hey, you post up in that area and be ready to help me out. You post up here, you post up here.
Oh, for sure.
Someone should be able to drive from another state on the spot like Dylan just did. Dylan decided to do the high country again.
Who's Dylan?
Dylan Morton. So he was in the race.
Okay.
Unfortunate mechanical over by Podo Mountain.
I feel like I remember
Made
this,
of Salt,
but...
if we're going back to Instagram handles, Made of Salt.
Okay, yes.
Yes.
I know Made of Salt.
Yes, great dude. So his name's Dylan Morton.
Thank you.
He came back to do it again, killed it. Like, it was awesome to see him knock it out.
And a guy from my area was just up here that was on the podcast, Mark McGraw.
Yes.
Did you? Yeah, he's from my neck of the woods.
Yeah.
And he was the unofficial winner of the local Grand Gravel 500.
I listened. You had a podcast with him.
Yeah. So he was just out here attacking on. I haven't seen how he did or whatever, but I know he was just out here.
Was he doing an ITT of it?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he's out here doing. He might actually still be on it.
That's so awesome.
I don't really know,
awesome.
but yeah, go Mark.
Yeah, right. Shout out Mark McGraw.
Shout out Mark McGraw. Go get it, buddy.
And that's what I love is that I remember listening to that podcast and him being like, man, you know what? I need just a little bit more training and time before I go back to tackle this again.
Yeah.
And that'd be for me for the FK, like going for an FKT attempt or just the best time I can put out is I want to take time to train and scout more sections. And like whenever I try it again, it's going to be an ITT and me just going out of my brain for however many days.
Why is that? Is that based on your experience that you had? You don't want to be in the race, atmosphere or what?
It took for a lot of years. I just didn't like the idea of competition at all. I always wanted to, if it was competition, it was against the mountain or against myself or
you
whatever.
The elements, you against
it didn't,
yourself.
It didn't matter if it was someone else did it or whatever, was I able to do it? And so, like I mentioned, I didn't plan on doing the race, but kind of had a few people like, hey, just do it. And then the more I thought about it, it's like, man, I'm going to be watching it. And the whole time kind of wonder if I was trying it too, how would I basically compare to others.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. Part of it was, hey, if I happen to win this thing, because I was confident and like my fitness was there. I've done a bunch of suffer fests in the past and I know how to suffer. It's like, man, if I happen to win this thing, then maybe some company out there would be like, hey, you're cool. We want to help support you, like do more bike things, like ride your bike more.
Right.
And so it wasn't really about winning. It was more about like, hey, here's an opportunity to maybe like pursue my dream. And so that's really what it was. And you go do an FKT. I've done so many things in the past where you do it, and then if you don't tell people or don't have a good way to tell people, then no one even really knows.
Yeah.
Like I've done some really big things that like I'd nearly die or snap myself in half and like crawl back to the car
Nobody
at the
knows
end.
about it.
And I'm like, dude, I just read this article about like how only 5 people have ever done this ever. And like this person's a pro athlete. This person's a pro, like every single person is a name, you know. And then I'm like, I was number 6, but I don't know how to tell people. And I like part of me just didn't care either. I was like, I did it. That was sweet. I know I can play these games.
That's super interesting to hear about your history in different areas, testing yourself, finding out your limits, putting yourself in really scary situations and obviously living through them and coming out the other side. Like those grow you as a person and those always stick with you. And no matter what kind of physical shape you're in, you can always go back to that,
Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting, like to know that about you as a person and then put that in perspective of the high country and like know how deep you can dig.
Every time you go deeper, it's your new baseline.
Yeah.
So
it's scary.
whenever you're doing something, it's like, oh, I remember this one time where it was worse.
Yeah.
And so you can always go all the way up to the line where you're like, this is the worst it's ever been. Like anybody can do that. This is the worst it's ever been. And then from there, it's like, are you willing to launch beyond that?
Yeah.
So that's where a lot of people
deep space
cut it off right there. They're like, okay, I've reached this like spot I've been.
Well, it's interesting. I don't know. Are you familiar with David Goggins?
Yeah.
So he talks about 100% is death. If you give 100% to something,
exactly,
you're dead.
Exactly.
That's dead. And I like that, looking at it that way, you know? And so like, how far are you pushing it? Are you at 99%, 99.5? But I like that. If you look at like, if you give 100%, well, I guess unless you like 100% cliffhanger and like grab onto it and then you know what I'm
like
saying.
you collapse at the finish line or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And
you collapse at the finish line.
So that's kind of what it was, is doing a bunch of those kind of efforts. And then leading up to the high country, I was thinking to myself, okay, you're going to race. You're going to hurt yourself more than you've ever hurt yourself in your entire life.
Now, can you pause real quick? And like, you're thinking this before Ted King showed up and like made his presence known, or after that?
It was,
because I'd like to know how your mentality shifted, if at all, when Ted King signed up.
So leading up to it, I was already, well, like I mentioned, like a month out, I decided I was going to do it.
Yeah.
And all of September, I was sleep deprived for an entire month, which I've never experienced in my life. For an entire month, our bike shop had a competition where whoever got the most miles in this month got a prize. And I was like, I think I can ride a lot of miles. I'm gonna partake in this. Still working 40 hours a week. So all they said was it's gonna be better than a taco and a t-shirt. And if it's a bike shop saying that to 13 bike shops that they own, it's probably gonna be something bike related. And I was like, hey, I'm signed up for this race. Maybe I could get something better than the intro group set on the Warbird.
Yeah, something.
Like, I have the entry level Warbird. I have nothing fancy.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, I can't afford a new group set or something like that. Let's just ride a ton of miles and maybe I can get a slight upgrade on the bike to help with the race. And so turned out there's a few people willing to throw down.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, who would have thought?
That's funny.
And so it was late in the month. There's like a few days left, and there's me and another guy. Like, he does a century, I do a century. He does a century, I do a century. And I mean, I'm doing this after I clock out at like 7 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
I'll go ride my bike till
packing training.
I'll go ride my bike till 3 or 4 in the morning because I need to make up some miles, and then I'll sleep for a few hours and go to work. And then I would see that he's riding road, by the way, which he put in miles. It's awesome. But the miles I was putting in is like, I'm putting in, for the most part, gravel miles in the Ozarks with stupid crazy elevation. Like, this is...
So it was a miles competition, not an hours competition?
Yeah.
Oh,
so I spent way too many hours because I'm like, I'm still going to go train and see these roads I need to see and this and that. And yeah, I got to the end of the month and I was like, sick. Did it. What am I going to be able to do to my bike to make it a little bit more awesome? Nothing. Didn't hear anything.
Wait, you won.
I won. And so that was like September. I'm like, this probably isn't efficient training. It got to a point where I was like, this is not good training. Like, I'm definitely going to be weaker by the end of this because I'm going to need a lot of time to recover.
Yeah.
But so like, that was kind of leading up to the race. And then
What'd you win?
it was after the race, but
you didn't find out till after.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did end up getting like some carbon wheels, so I'm really happy about that.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. So that was leading up to it, and then I knew Dylan was coming to do it. I had recently started chatting with Jesse out in Oregon. He's done a lot of endurance racing, bikepacking racing. He's been over, I think he did the Atlas Mountain race. So there's these people coming in, and I'm like, whoa, they've done a lot of racing. Dylan's done the Tour Divide.
Jesse has his own race.
Jesse has his own race now, the Big Lonely, which this is going to be the second year of it. And then I heard like some of the district crew. I'm like, oh man, they sound like some serious dudes. And so I was like, man, this is some stout competition. I don't know. Like, I have some fitness and I have some like stupid perseverance, but I don't know how to fix a bike. And I don't really know the game of bikepacking. I've never done a race before. I barely know gravel. Like, I've done it for a year now. And so
you hadn't played around with like sleep deprivation.
Yeah.
And riding,
like, I've played around with sleep deprivation a few times. I've pulled some all-nighters in the mountains. I pulled one all-nighter on a bike before, and I was like, okay, like, I kind of know I can do that much. So already I was kind of like, okay, I think I can be towards the front, but I don't know how it'll play out. And so a couple weeks later, like you mentioned, whenever Ted King signed up and it's in Velo News, it's like, I'm like, man, shit, like, they're blowing this up. I was like, fuck, like, that's a strong dude. Like, that's a guy where he's World Tour cycling is another level. It takes so much to get to that level. It's insane. And you don't get that with a few years of riding fixed gear bikes and like swapping around. Like, whenever I was rock climbing a ton, I stopped doing anything with my legs because I was like, if you get more muscle in your legs, you're gonna be heavier.
More dead weight to
like,
carry.
You don't like your legs. You use them. Your feet.
So I never thought about that.
So there'd be phases where I'm listening to what the best rock climbers are doing. I'm like, okay, stop anything that would make my legs heavier. And so I would have a year or two where I didn't really do anything with my legs. And then so like I was doing the opposite of like training.
I saw a guy today, I shit you not. I had to go to Dollar Tree to pick up some batteries for my little recorder.
Which
here.
your setup is, I'm impressed with your setup, man. I like it.
It's pretty simple, but it works really well. And I shit you not, there was a U-Haul right next door, like 100 feet. A guy drove his golf cart next door to Dollar Tree to go get his chips and soda and then drove his golf cart back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it made me think of.
Hell yeah. Yeah. And so Ted King signs up, Velo News, blah, blah, blah. So in there, in the article, it's like, hey, he's brand new to bikepacking. So already in my head, I'm like, I forgot about all the competition. Only I'm thinking about Ted King. I'm like, wait a second, he's never bikepacked before. Mm-hmm. And so there's all these little things. I'm like, hey, there's little weaknesses in this armor. But then I would stop for a second and be like, Andrew, you barely know what bikepacking is. You've never been in a bikepacking race before. So all these things I'm like, these are like chinks in his armor per se or whatever. I'd look back at myself and be like, oh shit, dude, like neither of you, like, yeah, like just because you've been riding gravel a ton recently doesn't make up for like 2 decades of cycling someone's been doing leading up to it.
But in your defense, you were trying to, and maybe you weren't thinking about it this way at the time, but you were trying to mentally prepare yourself to get ready to go against the guys.
Yeah.
So like,
yeah, really,
you know, if you were like, you're like, oh, I see a chink, I see a chink. And if you were feeling confident, you should, ideally as an athlete, you should feel confident. That confident, how can you push yourself that far if you don't have confidence in yourself that you can do it?
Yeah. And the mental game is huge. And so that was part of it. And it'd be hilarious because I'd just be like at work 40 hours a week. I'd pull up the computer and read the Velo News article during work, and like coworkers would be around me and they'll be like, well, what do you think about that and this and that? And so I'm just on the daily grind thinking about how I'm going to I don't know. We're living two very different lifestyles, to say the least.
Yeah.
And so,
well, I even talked to him about it on the episode that I did with him about, I mean, he's a professional athlete with
for sure.
every resource at his disposal. I mean, that's not a secret. He just has worked really hard. Like you said, he didn't just get there.
Exactly.
He worked his butt off,
Absolutely.
and now that's where he's at.
And he's like doing untapped maple and everything. Like he's doing a lot.
He's doing a lot. He's got a new little girl.
Yeah.
And much love. But like, he wasn't a bike packer. He didn't know these roads. He didn't know how steep the hills were, and he even talked about being shocked by how steep they were, right? So it wasn't crazy for you to be like, I got some advantages here, right?
But it's still funny at the end of the day, because not even a year ago I'm watching videos on YouTube of like, oh, Ted King goes to the Dirty Kansas, or Pete Stetina does this. I'm like geeking out on what all these guys are doing, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm in a race against that person that I've been like watching videos of, or like listening to all their podcasts about. It's interesting where you're like, oh shit, everything I've been trying to learn is from people that I'm also going to be trying to compete against, I guess. Because apparently I think that now I can, just because I've been trying for a little while.
No one signs up because they're going to try to do their worst.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So that's a big thing with this race, was I've already seen the route. I live here. I can do sections of it any given time. It wasn't about finishing it, because I've already done that. And whenever I did it over the summer, that was like one of the hardest things I've ever done, was just finishing the thing, which blew me away. It humbled me. I was sold that I'm going to live in Arkansas for the rest of my life after doing the Arkansas high country route.
Wow.
I emailed Chuck Campbell and was like, hey man, this is a masterpiece. I absolutely appreciate everything you've done with this, because this is just phenomenal. I was blown away.
It like showed you a side of Arkansas you never seen before.
Absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely.
As
someone that's lived here for
that's the thing, is like
most of my life,
Arkansas.
Most of my life. Granted, I was like new to gravel riding, but I was rock climbing in Arkansas for years, and we'd drive down these gravel roads forever to get to the climbing walls and crags and campsites and stuff. So I've seen a lot of it. Yeah. But doing that whole loop, it's such a journey that I was absolutely blown away.
And it does speak to how immersive cycling is to really put you in sync with everything, to the geography, to the culture, to the food, to the landscape. Yeah. I mean, you really, if you do 1,000 miles of it, you're going to really be immersed in it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so part of it was like this pride of like representing Arkansas. So here's this guy coming from another state that is like, I'm new to bike packing, and I'm just going to have, I don't think he ever said he's like, I'm just going to have fun, but he was definitely in the article kind of saying, hey, I don't know what to expect. This is new to me.
There's no pressure on him, right?
Yeah.
He has all these accolades and awards and accomplishments. There's no pressure on him to do well.
It's a year of COVID. Let's try something funky and fresh. But he was already doing badass shit. Like he did all of Vermont in one go. Like he's doing all this stuff. I'm like, oh, sick. I like this direction that he's going in. Like this makes sense to me. This is cool. And so whenever I saw he's doing all these big efforts, and I'm going to come down to Arkansas and we'll just see what happens. It's like, man, if you're going to just see what happens, I'm going to like make sure that you have to try at least a little bit.
I love that.
And so it's a little bit of kamikaze mode, honestly. I mean, before it, I said, it's like either I'm going to go up in flames or I'm going to pull off something crazy. And that was the mentality I was going in with, was I'm just going to go out of my brain until I can't anymore. And either that's going to be at the finish line or it's not. And so yeah,
dude, now I want you to break it down. Like, just, I mean,
it's crazy because
the races are so
hard.
I
forget about this race.
Yeah.
For days, and then a day will hit me where I'm just like, I'll just have a very vivid memory of a specific moment of it or something. And I'm obsessed with this route. It's just, it truly is incredible. And I'm so happy I live here, because I'm going to keep giving goes on it. And like, I want the FKT, and it's not because I want to be like, hey, I'm better than everybody else, but it's like, I love this landscape so much that it'd just be so cool to be like, I'm the fastest to ever move through this place.
because you didn't get there by happenstance. You got there from putting in the time,
Mm-hmm.
the effort, and everything to get
Exactly.
you there. It's not about, oh, I got this. It's about, oh, I got myself there.
Yeah.
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 Dude, I don't even know where to start, but I mean, like, how did the race go down
Yeah.
for you? I mean,
And I've never really talked about it in much detail, because people afterwards will be like, how was it?
Yeah.
Or it's so hard, and just like a brief interaction, or if you're with multiple people. And that's why I love that you're really intentional about long form conversation and sitting down, and it's one-on-one, and you have each other's attention, because I've like been wanting to talk about it, but I can't tell it multiple times. Like, so I'd rather just like talk about it once, and then anybody that's interested about it, they can listen to it.
I love that.
Like, you may have 80% of the people that listen to your show never listen to this episode. I really don't care, but there's going to be at least one person that's like, this is really freaking interesting, and you have my attention the whole time. That's what makes it worth it. With your podcast, that's what I love, is as long as it genuinely affects one person out there in the world, I think that was worth it. And you should have a job for that. Because if you really just helped one person out, that's worth it.
Well, thank you.
People get in really dark spaces, and sometimes it just takes one other person out there to relate. And you save their day.
Dude, and I mean, I can tell you, I've gotten countless emails from people, especially like during 2020, who were really struggling. Man, they found some light with the podcast. And I mean, I was going through a divorce in 2020, so I was, doing my own stuff, but it was important to me to keep it going, and I felt that, and it was not only important that it was important for me because it kept me connected to the community too.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about, like, I get a lot out of doing it, you know?
Yeah.
I'm very lucky, to be, but really I'm just the guy that's asking the questions. You got the hard job.
But you're willing to put in the work to tell the story.
I'm super interested. I like people, and I really put value. I'm not very interested in those surface level conversations. Like, they don't interest me too much.
Yeah.
If I'm going to sit down and talk to somebody, I want to get to know them.
Yeah.
I want to understand, like, all those things that led up to, like, you were a 4.0 student, and then you, like, went and tried to, like, quote unquote, say, find yourself, and then you, like, went to the brink, and then you pulled it back, and then you found cycling as a way to, like, as like a moderate drug, like maybe a healthier drug. A healthier drug.
Absolutely.
I mean,
more expensive drug though. That's what sucks. That's what sucks.
I think the money will come for you. I think it'll come.
These truck lights are still on, by the way. I'm gonna hit lock and see if anything happens. So,
oh my gosh,
the high country, that's everything leading up to it. And
now I want to hear what happened.
Yeah, I'm down.
Let's hear it.
So I do want to talk about Iowa Wind and Rock a little bit, because that was a more recent experience, and those people need so much praise for what they're doing up there. And ultimately, I'm trying to bring that experience to Arkansas. And
good. Well, let's do Arkansas and then hit that one.
So the Arkansas High Country Race, basically it's week of, and I'm starting to let it all sink in. It's like, okay, this is real. For a fact now, I know I have to hurt myself more than I've ever hurt myself before, because that's what's going to take to maybe have a chance to compete with a world tour cyclist.
Is that scary?
In a cycling event, because we're doing a cycling event, right?
His home turf.
There's bike packing, there's all these different genres of cycling, if you will. But if someone is on a global scale recognized for being a professional, then that carries over in a lot of aspects.
100%. And it showed.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so what he did was fucking badass.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to take quite a while before anyone can touch that.
That's cool.
Like, quite a while. And like right now, I don't even know who those people are. Like, I think it would take someone like Sophion or James Hayden or Lael or...
But here's the thing, bro.
It's like a handful of names.
I know. Yeah. But this is what's exciting about this whole race and what we're talking about is that, I mean, I don't know this for a fact, but I believe that you're the reason he got that time, right? Like, you're
One
the
of the first
reason.
things Ernie said whenever I talked to him afterwards
Right.
was, it's like, bro, why do you have to ride that hard? Now he got the FKT. Ernie was trying to find me to like give me some moral support, because like there's the local people that are like, fuck yeah, Andrew, like give it hell. Like, come on, man. And so like I had Ernie chasing me down between Hot Springs and Little Rock. He couldn't find me. I was having all kinds of dot problems. My great friend Lillian, she was hunting me down, trying to find me, but winding it back to the start. So I'm like, okay, gonna hurt myself more than I've ever hurt myself before. And it wasn't because like I need to win. I need to be better than everybody. It was like, fuck, dude, this is a big name right here. A lot of people know who this is. And if for some reason I finish before this person, some people are gonna notice.
Yeah.
And it's not because like I want people to know who I am. It's like, hey, there's going to be some companies out there that want to be associated with what one of the fastest people is doing.
Yeah.
And like give him a chance to ride his bike more. That's what it was all about. And so that's the start of it. Like I knew that would be an FKT. No matter what, I was like, that's going to end up being an FKT. The conditions are pretty decent.
Yeah.
We had a ton of rain leading up to it, but then everything just magically lifted. I wasn't thrilled about October. Like whenever I go do another go on it, it will not be October. It's going to be probably like May, like this month, like way more sunlight.
It's nice right now.
It's really nice out. Yeah, there's just having more light in general, you can go faster for sure. And starting in Fayetteville is not the fastest place to start.
So y'all started at different directions too.
Exactly.
Which is part of what made it exciting.
Yeah. And I even remember him mentioning, he did like a podcast with his wife, Lauren. Ted did. And then you did one with him as well. One of the two, he mentioned that he wasn't even looking at the counterclockwise direction. Like, why would you? Like, you just look at whoever's behind you going your direction. Because who the hell is anybody else going the other way, right? Like
he didn't say that on mine. I guess that was with his wife.
Maybe it was with his wife.
Yeah.
But I'm not Ian Boswell. I'm not Peter Stetina. I'm not Colin Strickland. I'm not Payson McKelvin.
Yeah.
I'm not any of these people. So I'm not even a known name in the bikepacking world. I'm literally just like the local dude
who showed up. He came back, bought a cheap Warbird, and started going crazy on gravel
with
roads.
A credit card, still paying it off. So
sponsor me.
Shout out Salsa. Starting going counterclockwise. I know for sure I'm not sleeping the first night. Like that's guaranteed.
For sure. Yeah.
Like I've pulled an all-nighter before, so I'm going to hurt myself more than I've ever hurt before. So obviously one all-nighter, not even a question.
Yeah.
We have the daylight savings fall back an hour. So it ended up being like a nice little bonus hour in there, and pulled all-nighter counterclockwise. Basically the whole intention behind it is you hit the heavy metal immediately. Like you're in it, you're getting slapped in the face. You do the biggest run out of the whole thing concerning resupplies and stuff. Mm-hmm. I was like, okay, if I have to start in this location, which isn't my first pick, I love where I live. It's nothing against Fayetteville. It's just a strategic move about the route itself.
I hear you.
It's okay. Counterclockwise makes more sense. If I'm going to do 36 miles of bike trail, I want to do it at the end when I'm destroyed and falling apart, not at the beginning.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
There's all these different factors. Counterclockwise and pulling the all-nighter. Don't really check dots at all for quite a while. I think I checked it once or twice early on just to see where Dylan was, because he was killing it. He terrified me of bikepacking because this is my first bikepacking race. And he took off like a bandit. He was out of sight before we even left the greenway.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, fuck, if this is what bikepacking racing is, like, I don't have a chance.
Yeah.
Everyone has different sleep strategies. So, like,
that's what actually makes it interesting, right?
And so I checked once or twice because I was just curious how far up the road he was, because I felt like I was going pretty quick, but I was still conserving enough to be realistic with the whole effort. And it was 2 a.m, 1 a.m, something like that, right before Mount Magazine. I passed him. He was in a ditch, had his bivvy up. I think he was setting his alarm or something because his light was still on. So it was like he was actively getting ready for sleeping. I was like, okay, that gives me some reference. Like now I know I'm in first and counterclockwise. I'm about to hit this huge section of no service. I don't really care. Get to the top of Mount Magazine, change my layers because it's a big descent. I was like, I'm going to be cold. And then I do my big push of no service. Like this is the biggest push of the whole race of no resupply, nothing. And that's from Mount Magazine to Queen Wilhelmina. There's not a ton of talk of like when you get really nitty gritty with the route itself. Yeah. And so some people will really appreciate this because they want to really know more about the route itself. Other people are like, no, this makes sense. I don't know what any of this is. But so you do that whole push, and Podo Mountain, mile for mile, is the hardest section of the entire route. You hit that in the first 24 hours at the pace I was going. And Jay Peterberry, he said he only had to hike a bike once. It was there.
Okay.
Scotty, Ernie, Dylan, anyone I've talked to, we all agree this is the hardest section, mile for mile. If you choose like 10-ish miles of 1,000 something miles, this is the hardest.
Right.
So I'm hitting that at mile or like hour 24-ish to start it. Do it. It's demanding. It's hard. It's not fun. I mean, it is fun, but
Type 2.
I descend the other side of it, and before I even started climbing it, I was like, I'm gonna have to sleep on the other side of this for sure. That's before starting it. I was like, I'm gonna need some sleep and get through all of it. The more I learn, the more I'm like, hey, sometimes you just honestly need to step off your bike and walk it. Like there's no one watching you. Like, you're capable of riding this hill. Do you need to ride this hill right now in the grand scheme of this whole thing?
And the other thing I've learned is that it gives your muscles a little bit of a break.
Yeah.
And so you're using different muscles, and so you're not, is it your Achilles that gets more, I don't remember what, I'm not a doctor, but anyway.
Neither am I, that's for sure.
One of them things.
Yeah. And so I charged through all of it anyway. I didn't hike any of it. I just went through all of it.
You did it. So all these other people that have hiked it,
but it's way different counter versus clockwise.
Oh,
clockwise,
you did it the right way.
Clockwise, it's very, very loose, very, very steep the first bit of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care who the fuck you are not riding your bike up that unless you're on maybe a mountain bike and have very, very high fitness. That's the only way to get around it.
Okay.
And so I went the other way, which is way easier, honestly. And that's one of the big distinctions with going counterclockwise is if you're thinking about the hardest section, which way's easier, and I go counter and it makes it easier, that's a pretty key moment. And so counterclockwise, get through it, descend the other side, and I decide to sleep. Started the race, I think 7 a.m. on Saturday. 10 a.m. the next day with the hour fallback is when I take my first nap. Set my alarm for 45 minutes. Honestly, I'm feeling really guilty. I'm like, man, you're taking a nap right now. Like, what are you doing? It's like the sun is shining. It's beautiful. And you're taking a nap. And so I was like, no, Andrew, like, you can take a nap. It's okay. 45 minutes is less than an hour. That's justifiable. I haven't been looking at the dots, so I don't know what anyone else is doing. But just to me, that's what I felt like was the right move at that time. Yeah. I think even if I was doing an ITT, that's exactly how I would have done it from starting in Fayetteville. Ride a little bit, get to my first resupply in a really long time. These two older dudes, pretty redneck, they're like, hey, what's up? How's it going? It's at the base of Queen Wilhelmina. It's Rich Mountain. Super nice guys. There's like, are you doing that Arkansas high country race thing?
Oh, man.
Like, yeah, dude, I am. It's like first time I've talked to people in forever, right? You've like already gone through hell, and they're like, oh shit, here's society again.
Oh, man, yeah.
Like, people forget about that, where you're just like so out there and you haven't talked in hours and hours and hours. And
oh, it's weird.
So they're like, hey, what's up?
And you're not all there.
Yeah, definitely not all there. You've already pulled one all-nighter and took a 45-minute nap. And
trying to act normal.
Yeah, exactly. And so they welcome me in. There's not really anything in there. Like, there's some sodas and some candy bars and stuff. And they're like, but we can make you food. I'm like, man, that's going to take some time, but okay. Like, So they make me some food, and they're like, hey, we got this laptop, and we heard about it. You were talking about Seth Wood earlier.
Yeah.
So I guess Seth Wood called in advance because he was going counterclockwise. And he's like, hey, I'm not going to be there before you guys close. I will pay money now for a cheeseburger if you leave it outside.
Nice.
Something along those lines.
That's a good
And
move.
so they didn't know anything about this race at all, the guys working there, until he talked about it.
Oh, okay.
And then they're like, there's a website that tells you where the dots are.
Yeah.
And so that was hilarious.
Yeah, that's awesome. You got rednecks watching dots.
Just because they're like, I can sell some cheeseburgers.
Yeah, heck
like,
yeah.
hell yeah. That's like, I made fucking $12 extra dollars today.
I like that part of it,
Yeah,
actually, that
yeah.
you
Which
do
is
bring
cool.
some economy to like some of these rural areas. Yeah.
And so they're super nice. I stay a little bit longer than I want to just because I'm like, oh man, you guys are so nice. I got to talk to you a little bit. You're being so accommodating. But they got their laptop up. Their internet's super slow. So they're like, it's refreshing, just 1 minute. And then they pull up the dots. And this is the first time I've seen dots in a very, very long time. First time I've ever looked at it seriously. And they're like, oh yeah, you're first. I'm like, yeah, that's counterclockwise direction though. Like, what about the other side? Like, how many miles have they done? And they're like, oh, there's this guy, Ted King. He seems to be in first. He's pretty far ahead. I'm like, what mile is he at? And then it was like a little over 300. It's like 303 or something. And I was like, what mile am I at? And they're like, well, it looks like you're like 305.
Oh,
and I'm like, oh, fuck.
I gotta go.
Dude. So I like put bacon and sausage in my cargo bib shorts, like in the side. I'm like, I gotta start going. And they're still giving me a spiel on the area. They're like, tell your bike packing friends that there's like showers here and you can kick it. And I'm still kind of like,
they don't understand.
Yeah,
You're
so I'm
like
still
winning against Ted King.
so I'm
and they're
kind of like still trying to be respectful and like I'm interested in them because I'm like, you guys are so fucking cool and I live here. I know I'm gonna see you again.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna be a dick last second and like bounce.
Yeah.
And I leave, I'm going up it. I'm like, all right, shit. Like, okay. And that's the first time I had service up in a while. Like I made it my intention to not really look at my phone much. Like I definitely wasn't going to be responding to messages.
Right.
The Arkansas High Country race, they want you to take selfies at certain spots to kind of like show progress and promote the whole event and everything, which is cool. I get it. And so I would take like a video clip as I'm riding through that area. Be like, hey, I'm still riding my bike, but you want an update. So as I'm riding, here's like, I'm going to talk for a second about what's happening.
Yeah.
And I just thought that'd be a cool way to like give dot watchers a little bit more context.
I loved it, yeah.
Because that's what I noticed with Sophion. I loved that Sophion would like just be talking about what's up. Like,
well,
dude,
it's like real time.
yeah, like
there's not very many sports that you can't watch football and be like, all right, well, I'm about to like throw the ball to this guy or whatever. But I mean, if you have service, you can like in real time see what the race leader or the chaser is thinking or feeling or what they're, all kind. Or you could just listen to someone sing.
Yeah, that's what Sophion is. And so I was doing those throughout. Like I'd record it, but I might not be in service. And then like next time I'm in service, I'd try to upload it. And so like that's when I get like these bursts of the outside world, because it really all it was is me trying to upload a video to like give my required updates.
Mm-hmm.
And so during that time frame while I have it up to upload,
But you had cell service, so then everything would
pours in. And so like you just see whatever out of all these Instagram messages, text messages, whatever, you just see snippets of a couple of them, because like I had to turn on service and boom, that immediately shows up. And so like I'd see a few things like, you're in the lead of the whole race, keep it up, or fuck yeah, man, keep going, like all these different things. And so that just gave me the surge of adrenaline.
I was one of those people.
I was like, oh shit, like this
realize it's bigger than you.
Yeah, I was like, okay,
people are watching.
I'm like, people are watching, one, but two, it's happening. Like this is happening right now.
Oh yeah, you're in it.
You're no longer thinking about it.
You're in another one of those, not life and death, but you're in one of those, what I do now matters.
This is the moment. I'm living in the moment.
Yeah, I'm
That's
living
exactly
in the moment.
It's
Yeah.
like very real. I'm living in the moment. And so I was like, all right, let's fucking go. And
let's fucking go.
Ride for a while, make it to what's going to be another pretty big run out of resupply. And I know I'm going to be riding through the night. So I stop at a gas station in Hatfield, which is a pretty key resupply, eat some food, chill there for a minute, put on some more layers. And from there I launch pull another all-nighter. I'm like, all right, let's fucking go. Like,
So we're on day 3 or day 4?
So this would be, we
No,
started
day-
7 a.m.
day 3.
on Saturday,
Yeah.
pulled the all-nighter. We're going through Sunday night now. So Sunday night, so far I've slept 45 minutes. If I fell asleep immediately on my alarm, which I didn't, so
Yeah.
a little less than 45 minutes. I was tired enough to where I probably fell asleep pretty quickly.
43 minutes.
Sunday night, riding through Sunday night, and working my way to Hot Springs, which is a big resupply. And that's when I start keying in the podcasts. I was like, okay, I haven't ever pulled 2 all-nighters back-to-back before. So now it's time to tune into Patrick and Sophion talking about sleep deprivation.
The arsenal.
And I'm just in the middle of nowhere, and it's kind of lonely. And I want to feel a little bit more comfortable. Here's just some people talking. Because you get out there on this route, and if you fuck up, no one's helping you for a long time. And
especially the descents are what scare me, like the descents. And I know you're running a narrower tire than I would have ran, and you're on a fully loaded bike, and you're sleep deprived, and it's steep. I mean, you're going, I don't know how fast you were going, but you can easily go 30 plus mile an hour.
Steep. It's technical. People constantly get punctures and sidewall tears on the high country.
Yeah.
Like Rebecca Rush did, Jay Peterberry did, pretty sure Ted did, Dylan Morton did. Like all these people, like their tires are getting torn up because it's real deal shit out here.
Yeah.
And so you kind of just need to tone it down a little bit and be like, let's just hear some people talking and hanging out. And I just imagine exactly this scenario where we're kicking it in the woods, sitting next to each other, sipping on some whiskey.
Yeah,
I'm like, you know what? I feel like I'm hanging out with some friends right now. And so I listened to the one with Sophion. I'm like, okay, man, he's gone much longer than this with no sleep, so I can pull this all-nighter. Like, if he's gone 2 or 3 times as long with no sleep, I know I can pull off half of it. Like, there's no reason I can't. And then get through that one. And then Bobby and Ted were doing the race. Like, let's tune into a podcast with Bobby and Ted. Why not? Like, they're both doing the race right now. They're out here doing this shit. I just want to listen to a conversation with them, feel like I'm hanging out with them right now. Because in a way, we're all kind of like
did Bobby Wintle go on Ted's podcast?
He did.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay.
You should listen to that one. It's good. It's just a really great conversation about...
I'm so busy doing my own, I miss, I'm
sure.
Anyway,
yeah. And so that's with being a consumer, it's great because you can listen to more.
Yeah.
You're not trying to produce
I remember
one at
the days
time.
when I used to be a consumer. I'm no longer a consumer. I don't get to, it's rare. Actually, part of the going on these road trips is pretty fun because I finally get to listen to podcasts again. Yes. And I miss it. I really like podcasts, but gosh, I've been so busy, I don't get a chance to listen.
I think that's where a lot of my love from podcasts came from, was just long drives.
Yeah.
The long drives.
You get to learn something, and if it's a good one, then you kind of feel like you're there, and you're kind of like a fly on the wall of a good conversation. Yeah, you weren't there, but you kind of got to be there in a way.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. And so I was like, these two are doing it. Don't really know a whole lot about Bobby still. I just know he's full of energy.
Yeah.
And he's a stoker.
Gives great hugs.
And I love his vibe. And let's hear some more about Bobby. And so it's basically how he started up District, which you were just over there. And so it's just a really cool conversation to learn more about his past leading up to that.
Yeah.
And
I need to interview him because I just got the Seth Woods story. And I'll let that unfold as it goes. But I want to get the other side of it.
Here's another reason to come back. So they'll be all about it.
Yeah.
And so, I listened to those two on the second night. And then I remember kind of like hysterically laughing with their conversation. Part of it because it was funny, but also I was like, oh shit, dude, you're kind of losing your mind right now.
What were you thinking when Sophion and I were talking about sleep deprivation and you were sleep deprived?
Well, part of it that's encouraging was like the hallucinations. I was like, I haven't had any hallucinations yet. Right. I can't be that bad.
Yeah, it's not that bad.
So that was huge. And then I had my first hallucination on the second night.
You did?
And I was like, oh, okay. Now
Okay,
it's
so
kicking in
I
a little
love
bit.
to hear about
And that's when I started
hallucinations.
laughing a little bit. And there's a tree stump. I was near Crystal Springs, way down in the Ouachitas, which I can't wait to do more riding in the Ouachitas. That's another whole untapped potential gold mine. Right now, I'm just trying to develop the Ozarks, but whenever I feel like I have time, Ouachitas for sure. Anyway,
Well,
down
the
there,
route goes into the Ouachitas,
It
right? Because
does.
like Lovett,
It
because
does.
you can do the Lovett single track as an option that nobody ever does, but it's like on there, right?
Which that's still something. That's still a first waiting to be done. Is
That's
doing
a
the single
first.
track variation.
Which would be cool.
We had Brian was going for it. A friend of mine, Brian,
Oh,
he
yeah?
went for it. He started down there, and
Oh, that's smart. Get that out of the way first.
And
Yeah.
that's another thing coming back to like having the rules and guidelines of bikepacking racing and stuff in general and ITTs. Is because there was controversy with him even starting down there. I was like, why is there controversy?
Yeah.
Like
If you can say you start anywhere.
Exactly. It was like, oh, but a host community owns it for a little. I'm like, no, you don't own the route. Maybe the race starts here for 2 years, but like
Right.
the
Yeah.
route is for anyone to enjoy, and you start anywhere. And
Yeah, and ITT, I would think, it would go anywhere.
Exactly.
You know, but yeah.
So I'm down in that area. It's paved for a minute. I'm like, oh my God. Anytime you're on the high country and there's pavement, you're like, thank the Lord. Like,
how many miles of pavement are there?
So it claims to be like around 50-50, which could be accurate, but the gravel at times is so demanding that you're spending way more time on gravel overall. So
I heard it was 60-40, but
gravel to
way.
pavement.
Yeah, 60 gravel, 40 pavement, but somewhere around there.
I feel like that'd be more accurate for sure.
Yeah.
50-50 seems really heavy on the pavement.
And his whole strategy to the race, you'll hear it on the podcast.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear that.
His whole strategy to the race was based on the 400 miles of pavement as a single speeder, you know, because he's like, I'm hike-a-biking, you know, the climbs, and you're pretty much just coasting the downhills. Yeah. So for him, as a single speeder, that 400 miles of pavement was the entire race.
I gotcha.
Yeah, kind of interesting
That's really
way to look at it. Yeah. Totally different whenever you're like, oh, I'm single speeding. You look at it in a completely different way.
Yeah. In that area, pavement, hallelujah, listen to Bobby and Ted laughing, kind of because it's just like an awful hill. And sometimes when just something really sucks, I start laughing. I don't know if that's a common theme amongst other people. I hope so.
It is for me.
Makes me feel less crazy if that's the case.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like raining and cold, and then you get a flat tire, and you're just, I laugh.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, so you're the one person I relate to at least. And laughing, go a little bit, and there's a tree stump, but I swear it's a three-headed dog, because there's just this funky area in Crystal Springs where there's some odd decorations. It gets kind of hippie, and it's in the middle of the night, so it's already kind of confusing. And this stump, I'm like, is that a three-headed dog statue? Like, I guess someone in the area would do that. Kind of seems fitting, I guess. Get a little bit closer to looking at it. And then it's clearly a stump. It's not a three-headed dog. I'm like, huh, that was a hallucination. I think that's the first time I've ever had a hallucination.
Do you know
being dead cold sober? Just
I like that asterisk. That's the first time sober I've ever had.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what a three-headed dog is? Do you know what it's called?
I don't.
Cerberus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like with Hades and Greek mythology and stuff?
The whole Greek mythology.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
the three-headed dog is Cerberus.
Curious.
Yeah. I had a pit bull that I was thinking about naming Cerberus, but I was like, yeah, that does. What do you like, Serby? Come here. All right,
that could work. And a little bit after that, I was like, you know what? I need to sleep. I'm getting
Here's
really
your
slow.
Sign. You're seeing three-headed dogs.
I'm getting really slow. That's mostly what it was. It's like, you can keep moving forward, but you're getting slow right now, dude. Like, you're better off just sleeping for a little bit and get a little faster. And so as soon as I had that idea in my head, I was like, you need to sleep. Flip of the switch. Where am I sleeping? And so riding for a while, I don't have a sleep kit with me because I'm like, you're racing, dude. If you sleep, it's a nap. And you better make it quick. And so
what? How would you sleep?
It's cold, and I have an emergency I wouldn't say bivvy. It's more one of those like the foil sleeping bag you crawl into, and like enough layers.
Emergency blanket.
Yeah, enough layers to where if you just passed out, you wouldn't die. That's what it was.
Yeah.
And so I was like, it's too cold right now. So the temperatures, with what it said in some of the towns in that area, wasn't necessarily a reflection of what it was when you get really low by the creeks and in the hollows and stuff. There's these pockets, and I know you've experienced it because you've done riding in Arkansas, where you hit these pockets and you're like, this is suddenly 5 degrees colder. It's just all of a sudden, boom, like this is real.
And the other thing is, like, you get hot going up and then you get cold going down, and then you get into one of those pockets and it's like, it's freezing cold.
And so I was getting more cold, plus just the combination of not having enough calories in your body. No matter what you do, you're never going to have enough calories in your body if you're riding nonstop. And so I'm starting to look like, hey, there's a bunch of hay bales. Maybe I could kind of like shimmy my way into some hay bales and kind of like get some hay to help insulate and put on every single layer and put myself into this emergency blanket. Maybe I could sleep. And I was like, man, that's just like in a really obvious spot, and someone's going to see me, and it's going to be a whole ordeal, and I don't want to deal with it. And then I got closer to a park ranger station. It's like, maybe I could sleep there, and I'm pulling on doors and stuff to see if anything's unlocked to where I could sleep inside. And that's when you're like getting into that weird, I don't know, where they're like, if it's just a person in society, they're like, what the fuck is this person doing right here? You're just like, I promise I'm a normal abiding citizen. I'm just in a race right now.
Yeah.
It's this weird line of like, I promise I'm not a crazy
I'm not
person.
trying to break an injury
like,
right now.
I promise I'm not a crazy person. Like, I know I look crazy, but I'm not crazy.
I've been there at 2:30 in the morning at a Baptist church in the middle of nowhere, Texas.
Yeah.
And some redneck rolls up on me. You know, he's drunk because he's coming home from the bar, 3 sheets to the wind, and he sees me at a church, and so he passes, goes back, and then shines his light at me. He's like, what are you doing here?
Yep.
Like, I'm in a race. I'm just trying to get water. I know this is crazy, but I'm just out here for fun. It's like, it's so hard to explain. Anyway, apparently you didn't have to in your scenario.
I didn't have to.
I've been in that scenario where I have had to what are you doing? And I'm like, sleep deprived and all that stuff, trying to like explain to somebody who has no concept.
Don't even understand the idea of like you riding your bike for one. You're like, you ride your
bike 10 miles?
What?
I don't understand.
On these gravel roads here? What? Whenever I'm pulling on the locked doors of the ranger station, that's when I'm kind of coming unraveled a little bit. I'm like, all right, dude, actually right before the ranger station there's supposed to be 2 motels in Mount Ida. So I get to Mount Ida, I'm like, this is an actual town. It's like, this is my first actual town in a long time. I want to sleep for a little bit indoors, kind of recalibrate. I need to charge some shit, and just getting out of these bibs for a minute would be nice. And it was too cold outside to sleep realistically. It would have been a little bit more
with what you had.
Exactly. It would have been a little bit more like, hey, you're going to semi-shiver, maybe semi-sleep, but ultimately you're not using your muscles for a little bit, and that's probably going to be beneficial because you're just getting slow. And so I'm researching on Google. There's 2 motels. I try one. No phone, no answer. So I just ride to the other. I'm like, I'm just going to go straight into the lobby and be like, yo, I need a room. I know you got something available. It's a Sunday night. We're in Mount Ida. Like, I know you got a room. So that's my whole thing. I ride to the next one. No lights are on. There's some cars there, but a lobby doesn't exist. It's like, call this number. I'm calling the number. No answers.
Jesus Christ.
An awful hour of like 3 a.m. or something like that. And I was like, fuck, I'm not going to get a room tonight. I guess I have to keep riding because, like, I don't know what else to do right now.
So you just had to ride because basically you had to stay warm.
It was too cold. I was like, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
And so I kept riding. Hot Springs has everything. Like, that's a major, major resupply. Yeah. It's like, Hot Springs is still impossibly far. It keeps feeling close. You get to these time frames where you're like, it's 16 miles away, 40 miles away. It sounds reasonable, right? And then you turn down a road and you're like, this road is fucked up. This is like a Jeep road with all these big ass rocks. You're averaging 3 miles an hour at times. And so all of a sudden that 40 miles is way further than what it sounds. And I'm like, I guess I'm going to push all the way to Hot Springs. And closer to 5 a.m., I see this community church. I'm like, I bet that thing's unlocked. And I go to it, pull on the door, and it opens. I'm like, oh my God.
No way.
It's Sunday morning. I'm like, all right. Like,
Praise
here's a church.
be.
Praise be. I'm like, I'm going to lay between these two pews. I'm protected from the elements. It's a wood floor. I got nothing to lay on. It's just I put on every single layer, get in my emergency sleeping bag, and set the alarm for, I was really wrecked because I already pulled the all-nighter. I've only slept 43 minutes maybe so far.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, you can justify 2 hours, Andrew. Like, that's justifiable, 2 hours.
That's justifiable.
You deserve more than those 45 minutes this time. And so I set that alarm, fall asleep relatively quickly, I think. Kind of tossing and turning. That's not like an ideal sleep situation, is on a wood floor between two wood pews in a church.
Yeah.
And it's still pretty damn cold. Like, wind's not actively blowing on you, but it's still cold in there.
Yeah, an old church doesn't have the insulation of like a new home and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Alarm goes off. I'm getting up, packing all my shit. I'm like, oh my, what are you doing? I was wondering if people were going to start showing up for church, because it's like 7 a.m. is right around sunrise. That's part of the motivation too. It's like 2 hours gets you closer to sunrise. At least when you wake up, the sun's going to be up. So that was my whole thing. I wake up. Yes, the sun is up, but I'm in the shade for a long time, so it's still fucking cold. Like, oh, this sucks. Get to Hot Springs. I forget. I had some kind of weird things going on with shifting. I think my brake pads were obliterated at that point because I've been doing a lot of night riding. And so you're on the brakes more when you're riding in the dark. And getting breakfast, waiting for a shop to open. Turns out none of the shops are open on a Monday.
Oh,
so
it's
I
one of
spend like an extra hour and a half, 2 hours chilling in this like breakfast joint with intentions of you're going to hit the bike shop the second they open.
What was wrong with your bike?
Like I said, I'm still newer to bikes. And at that time, I was like, I don't even know how to like properly adjust the rear derailleur to make sure it shifts more efficiently. I was like, it's worth spending this extra hour and a half to get your shifting dialed. That way the next 300, 400 miles is way more seamless and smooth than
you can make up that hour.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And just the peace of mind too. You're like, instead of being pissed off
at
your rear derailleur.
Yeah.
And so
it's just you and your bike. So having your bike barking at you the whole time isn't too much fun.
And if I was just like an experienced rider, I'd be like, oh, all you do is turn the barrel adjuster this way a little bit and that's all it takes.
Yeah.
But instead I wait for an hour and a half, ride to one shop, closed, ride to the other, closed. I'm like, you should be open. Pull it up on Google. Oh, you're not open on Monday. So I wasted all this time.
Why would a bike shop, I didn't understand this at the time, and I still don't understand it. If you're on the Arkansas High Country race and you're a bike shop,
that's how new it is.
Maybe you should be open.
That's how new this race is still.
That's crazy.
I guarantee you in the future, that will never be an issue.
I don't think after this race, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so...
Or this past year, yeah.
Yeah. I trudge on. I'm like, all right, whatever. You just wasted a ton of time. You need to make up some time. North of Hot Springs a little bit. I see a cyclist coming. I was checking dots a few times because I was in service. And I was like, okay, Ted's doing pretty damn well. He's already passed Little Rock. Hot Springs is kind of like the halfway point as far as when you take all things into consideration. Sure, counterclockwise, it's less distance overall, but the terrain you cover more than makes up for it. So I meet him a little bit north of Hot Springs. It's like, okay, we're kind of in the middle of the race right now, and we're meeting each other in the middle of the race. Like, in my head, I'm like, hey, you're just as in this as him.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's coming his direction, I'm going the other direction. I see him, I smile, I'm like, Mr. Ted King. And he just looks at me, he's like, you want to stop? I was like, yeah, let's stop.
Oh, cool.
So we stop, And I go to his side of the road, hop off the bike. What's going on, dude? I mean, I'm kind of delirious at this point. He's probably tapping into it at this point as well.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, just this shit's hard.
Just trying to beat you.
Yeah. And so we chat for a little bit, and it was really cool. It's just the first racer I've seen since we started the race. Apart from Dylan setting up his bivvy, I haven't seen anyone for a very, very, very long time. And so here's a brief interaction of someone that's experiencing the same crazy journey as you. So everyone else you're talking to is just a random person in society that has no understanding or concept of what you're putting yourself through. Yeah. And that's the thing. You go in for breakfast at a gas station, you're just this dude with bloodshot eyes that smells bad.
Like a homeless person.
Yeah, that has all these bags on a bike. Like you're a homeless person. You come in and you're spending $45, $50 on shit at a gas station. It's like, you're super skinny and short. How are you eating all this right now? And so anyway, I see him, we're talking. It's great to have a minute of, here's someone else going through the same experience as me. And then
what was your impression of his? Were you like eyeing him up, like what kind of condition is he in? How tired?
Yeah, so I've never talked to him before. This is the first time I've ever talked to him.
Yeah, so
ever. And I was curious for one, just like if he looked fresh as a daisy, or if he was showing anything of like, hey, I'm putting in work right now. I had no idea. For all I knew, he could have just been absolutely chilling. And so I say a couple things, and he said something along the lines of like, I'm blown away by your positivity and energy right now, or something like that. Oh. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, I'm definitely faking it at least a little bit.
Did you tell him that?
No.
Yeah.
But thank you.
My next question I was going to ask is, in that moment, did you try to also, I mean, we were playing a game of chess a little bit,
for
right?
Sure.
It's like, you're trying to eye up your opponent and also seem like, yeah, this is great. I'm having a great time.
Yeah. No, I was definitely just super genuine, because I was really excited to see him, and I'd never talked to him before, and I just thought it's cool. Honestly, I was like a little bit of a fan, just like, hey, I've been watching your videos for a while. I've read books with like your name in there and all kinds of stuff, and you're in my state that I absolutely love and adore, and you're doing this incredible route in this state. So part of it was just appreciation of like, hey, you're here. This is really cool. And I'm meeting you right now.
That's cool.
Also, we are in the middle of a race. And so we both kind of interchanged. Like, I mentioned like, you're about to go through some real shit. And he said the same things like,
I think you mentioned that on the podcast.
Yeah, you're about to go through some real shit. And I'm like, yeah, I've done it once before. So I know what's ahead, and it's not pretty. Like, I know what you're saying. It definitely gave me an adrenaline boost, because it felt even more real. I was like, here's this idea of me pursuing this dream of having a chance of being this professional athlete, or someone that has an opportunity to ride their bike on a scale to where they don't have to work a normal 9-to-5 or 40-hour job. And so in that moment, I was like, holy shit, this is real. Like, we just passed each other. We just talked. Like, I'm in it. I'm here. He's not feeling good. I'm not feeling good. And so that gave me a huge adrenaline rush. And so I'm charging my way north into the second half of the race, feeling like $1 million. Wasn't happy with some of the delays overnight and stuff, but I was like, you can make it up. And I'm getting closer to Little Rock, and there's a point where I get to a gas station finally, first gas station for a long time, or it's a Dollar General. Like, let's pull up service. Let's see how Ted's doing for one. Let's see how I'm doing. And the second turn it on, it's just boom. Hey, your spot's not working. Your spot's not working. Your spot's not working. Yeah. Even Chuck Campbell's like, hey, you need to be updating us. I see a message come in from my mom of like, are you okay?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's like, shit, I'm feeling incredible. This is great. But all these people are scared to death, and they're telling me that things aren't right, that you're still in Hot Springs right now. even though you're way north.
I remember
of
that. It was like you were just like waiting, and because I think there was this
it
narrative
was before I even
going
dropped
on.
into Hot Springs is where it showed I was at.
It was like you were, I don't remember if there was this narrative that you were like gonna just wait there, that you had a mechanical and wait for the bike shop to
and
open.
I have no idea, obviously, because I'm just riding my bike.
Yeah. But I like, we're all like trying to put the pieces together, you know, on the outskirts, like trying to figure out what's going on. Yeah.
So I see all that, and I'm in the Dollar General trying to be efficient, like pick out the right things. I know I'm not going too far until I still hit more resupplies. And it just really starts weighing on me. I'm like, well, shit. Like, Chuck is chiming in saying I need to be updating people more. And all these people are still saying I'm in Hot Springs. And I pull it up. I'm like, sure enough, my dot's still in Hot Springs. I'm fucking with my spot tracker. Like, hey, what's going on? Why aren't you showing that I'm here? Are people even going to believe me? Like, that's another thing, is just, why should it be believable that this random local ass kid is keeping up with a World Tour pro? And then I start getting all these doubts of like, people are going to think that I cheated. They're going to think that I cut the course somewhere because there's no live coverage of that.
That never crossed my mind.
I can upload a file later that shows, hey, I actually followed the route, but everyone's tuning into the here and the now. And so when they see that, hey, you were in Hot Springs and now all of a sudden you're in Little Rock, did someone give you a ride? Like, so all this shit starts flooding into my brain. And I remember being so, like, for lack of better terms, just devastated. That's like, the easiest thing right now is riding my bike. Everything else is the bullshit. And that was like a weird eye-opening moment where it's like me pulling two all-nighters and trying as hard as I can is the easiest thing, and convincing people that I'm actually doing it was like the hard part.
Yeah, because
there's not the documentation. And so
it almost feels like that other stuff that you've done that you haven't been able to really
exactly. It's like, even though I was actively doing it at the same time and people were watching, it was still like, where's the actual evidence? And so that just like threw me through a whirlwind. And so I was like really devastated for a while. And it was right before this weird detour where they're like, hey, we're doing construction at Two Rivers Park. And so you need to ride through this big ass grass field and follow these orange flags that we put in. And you're not allowed to touch this private road with all these mansions right next to you. So it's like this crazy representation of my life where it's like, here's this paved road with all these multi-million-dollar houses and people living like this glamorous life. And here's you like super broke and smelly and sleep deprived, riding through a grass field right by them because you're not allowed to touch their road.
Yeah.
Because it's a private road. And then that like fucking smacked me in the face. I was like, oh my God. Like, what am I doing right now? And that was like really tough mentally.
Which part about it was tough?
I was trying to find like a way to be valid and relevant through my performance at a bike race, because I wasn't able to achieve the standard of like a smart, successful American. And this like very stark comparison of just like, here's this road with these perfect houses and perfect lives, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And you are riding a bicycle that you still haven't paid off through a grass field next to it was, I don't know. And then with everyone still, because I kept my phone on for a little bit because I just wanted to keep pulling up the spot, because I wasn't going to stay at the gas station, the Dollar General, and make sure it updated. I was like, I'm going to keep fucking riding.
Yeah.
And it better update. If not, who cares? Because I signed a thing that said the spot is for entertainment purposes only, which is another thing. You're forced to pay for a spot that's for entertainment purposes only that does not like justify your attempt. It doesn't do anything with the race as far as like medical support or anything. It's like the spot is for people to watch you. It's for entertainment. And so
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So like whenever you're signing up for this race.
So what's your official thing that they use? I mean, do you record a GPX file, or is it just like when you...
It's just literally you show up.
You show up.
You show up at the square, right?
So it's
wherever you start,
quote unquote, a gentleman's agreement,
right? It's like wherever you start.
Well, and that goes back to the ITT, right?
Yeah.
It's like the whole self-supported, the whole ethos of the sport is like, hey, if I went and did an ITT and I started here and I stopped there at this time, then that's what I did. You know?
People don't know. Like there could be a stretch of 75 miles of pavement where you hop in a buddy's truck, you throw your bike in the back, and you're like, hey, cruise at like 22 miles per hour for 80 miles.
Yeah.
Like that's not unquestionable enough to where I can't pull it off. Yeah. It's like people will believe that, especially if it's in the middle of the night when no one's awake anyway. They'll just wake up and be like, oh, that guy did pretty good.
Push. He wasn't expecting that push.
Exactly. That's the thing.
Yikes.
And so it's this weird thing where it's the dot isn't validating your effort. It's your file. It's the file is what it comes down to. The file shows what you did. Yeah. So the dot is just for the dot watchers, which I love that we have dots because they have something to tune into and it's super exciting. But it's like if there's delays in the dot, so be it. That's part of the excitement. You're not there racing it. Yeah. If you're not in the local community and you can't pop your head out your door and be like, oh my God, so-and-so just cruised by, like Chuck that lives in Russellville, he can go down the driveway and be like, oh shit, there goes Ted.
Yeah. Well, I'll say just from my own perspective, which is only one I can speak to, whenever that was going on, the only thing I was thinking was, damn, that sucks. I really want to know where he's at. I hope his spot starts working pretty soon. That's all I was thinking.
And what I think is cool with podcasts too, especially like with this, where it's just two people sitting next to the Mulberry River in Arkansas, is, hey, we are sitting down and drinking some whiskey, and Andrew doesn't have a great bladder and he has to pee a ton. And so, hey, here's a second where he had to step away from the microphone and pee because that's Andrew. People, like when you're talking about relating, that's the same thing for me, where I'm like, oh my God, that other podcast guest, he had to step away from the mic twice because he can't sit down for 2 hours straight perfectly.
So can you pee while you're riding?
That's a good question. I've only done a few times where I can pee while I ride.
Yeah.
And I thought about it a ton during that race, was like justifying peeing, which is funny.
Yeah.
Because I remember listening to your podcast with Chris.
Chris, that's the one I'm thinking of.
Exactly.
Where he made an agreement with his bladder.
Agreements with his bladder. And for me, I'm like, you know what? If it's affecting me mentally now, it's probably worth the 25 seconds to get off my bike and pee and then feel awesome for the next 2 hours.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I've been trying to dial in over time is, and Dylan and I have talked about this before too. So Dylan showing up from Colorado last minute doing the Arkansas high country route. I was like, hey, what time are you starting? He's like, I don't know. He crashed. I offered, I'm like, crash at my place. You're going to start in Fayetteville. I live here. Whenever you get in tonight, crash at my place. We'll drive you to the square. You'll start. And then you have your official start time. You have your official stop time whenever you finish. And so we drove from my place. We got pre-burritos at Starbucks. And then we went to a place for sandwiches near the square. And then he's like, hey, you know what? I probably need to take a shit before we start. And now I can feel it. Let's go to this come and go on MLK. We'll come back and then we'll do the start. And we're talking about this. He's like, I don't need to put the extra pressure on myself that I need to start at 8:30 a.m. for my ITT. Like I will start whenever I'm ready.
Yeah.
If I had to take
a good long shit.
If someone was already in the shitter at come and go, so I had to wait another 10 minutes. So be it.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about the beauty of an ITT. For me, so Iowa, Wind and Rock, we'll come back to high country. I apologize.
No, go ahead.
But this is something for me personally with races is that I get anxiety and I get really amped up about it. And I'm like wanting to put forth my best self. The night before, I can't sleep. Iowa, Wind and Rock, I got 2 hours before the start because I just couldn't sleep. Yeah. I was just laying there. I'm like jazzed up. I'm like, oh my God, I'm about to ride my bike so far in all these roads I've never seen. This is going to be so dope. I can't wait. and I'm just vibrating.
It's not fear at all. It's all excitement.
I mean, a little bit of fear because you're like, oh, there's going to hit a point where this is going to hurt and this is going to suck.
That's the fear. It's like if you know that you're going to go deep, if you know you're going to hurt yourself, I got to think that that's a little scary.
For sure.
Because if you know what that's like, it's not fun.
Because then you're given week-to-week life. For the most part, it's just like, oh, yeah, I had my weekend. I go back to work. I repeat.
Yeah.
But then you hit these certain weeks where if you're someone that's doing races and it's ultra endurance races, it's like, oh, my week ends. Also, instead of a normal weekend, I'm going to obliterate myself this weekend and then go back to work.
Sure.
And so you're like, I need to wrap my brain around this a little bit. So pivoting back to the high country, whenever I'm north of Hot Springs, I'm freaking out about the spot tracker, and all of a sudden it's like everything else is the hard part. Riding my bike is the easiest part. I'm at a point where, okay, you've pulled 2 all-nighters, you've slept a total of maybe 2.5 hours at this point. You started at 7 a.m. on Saturday. It is now Monday night. It's time for a little bit more sleep, and all your shit's dead. Like, nothing's charged. Wahoo's almost dead. I'm on my backup light. I have 2 lights. One of them's working. The other one is completely dead, both batteries. My cache battery is dead, so I can't even like have the cache battery plugged into stuff and keep riding. Everything's dead.
Yeah.
So you can't keep riding. Physically, I could have kept riding, but I can't document it.
That's a good excuse to. Yeah, that's interesting. You can't document it.
I can't document it. And honestly, I was starting to feel right before the hotel I stopped at, there was a random ass dude that was in a pullout with his Jeep, and he starts applauding before I even get close to him. Like, I hear this applauding, and I hear like, yeah, man, keep it up. You're doing great. I'm like, holy shit. I get closer. I'm like, this is someone that knows what I'm doing right now. This is insane. I get closer. I'm like, thank you so much. Like, do I know you? He's like, no, you don't. But you're killing it and keep it up.
Wow.
And that was it.
Wow.
That was it. Just like a random hour on a Monday night. And that blew my mind.
Yeah.
And I was ready to smash. Like, fuck it. I don't need to sleep tonight. And then you look down, you're like, shit, nothing's charged. You're not allowed to ride because you can't prove it. And that's what sucked.
Wow.
It ultimately comes down to, because like I don't have the setup yet. I don't have a generator hub.
Right.
I can't be running a light nonstop. And it's not like, because I don't have the knowledge of how to do it. Like, I have friends that will help set it up. I work at a bike shop. It's just like, it literally comes down to the finances before it.
Yeah.
It's like, bro, you don't even have your bike paid off. You trying to tell me that you want a generator hub on it, you want aero bars, you want better wheels, you want a better group set. It's like, that shit adds up.
Yeah, but what I say is you'll get there, and when you do, you'll appreciate it.
Yeah, exactly.
And also look at what you've done without it, right?
Exactly.
Like, it's all a learning.
But at that moment, that was the limiter. And so I was like, all right, already a hotel sounds pretty nice, but here's like a super easy way to justify it. It's like, you can't keep riding for much longer because everything's gonna be dead. So go ahead and stop now.
But on some level, I'm thinking you might need the sleep.
Yeah, totally.
So, I mean, it may not be the worst thing.
Shout out your podcast. I was like, I think I can pull it off for longer.
Okay.
So anyway, I'm like, okay, you have to charge some shit. I'm in Maumelle, which is just a little bit north of Little Rock. It's like, there's a Walmart over there. One of my charging cords was destroyed from just like crumbs and snacks and stuff. That's something I didn't take into consideration, but it was living in my top 2 bag.
The little USB
it's
got
like,
clogged.
Yeah, it's the little things that you learn over time. Like, certain things can't remain exposed because it's just going to get clogged up with crumbs and stuff. And then you can't use it. And no matter what you do, it's clogged up. And so I only had 1 cord for my micro USB, and that's where it came in, where it's like, okay, I have to set alarms throughout the night to alternate what I'm charging to evenly distribute the charge, because you can't charge 2 things at once.
Okay.
So it's like, hey, you're going to give yourself 5 hours to sleep, but during those 5 hours, you're going to wake up every single hour, and you're still going to like swap what you're charging. So you're still going to be doing work during that sleep.
This is great.
And then on top of that,
This is really shows like what bike ultra nerd. I mean, like, this is like the nitty gritty.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
what is,
and that's what I would love more people to hear.
Yeah,
because this is the
I
reality.
agree.
When you talk to more people doing this shit, you're like, oh yeah, I had this one experience where it's like everyone's dealing with crazy, weird things like this.
Yeah, exactly.
And so on top of that, I get to this hotel, I check in, get my room. I'm like, okay. Already I can tell I'm too destroyed to even just ride my bike over to Walmart to get stuff. Like, that's not a good use of my time. I need to be in this room, chilling hard, falling asleep as soon as possible, and then getting back on the bike. So just that little bit extra jaunt to Walmart and dealing with walking through society and talking to someone at the cash register is too much. You don't need to do that.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, all right, you don't have a lot of money. You're going to order Domino's through PayPal credit because you definitely have the limit